having new ideas and multiple perspectives, being able to approach problems from ways that apply to the broader population.
Mm.
And I think that's one thing. Another thing is that it just brings a richer experience to the workplace. You
Mm.
know, when you think about someone exposing you
Mm.
to their culture or to literature or to something that's different than what you're used to, that helps you to continue to grow,
Mm.
as a person,
Mm.
and it broadens your experience. And so, I think that despite the fact that many people are fighting differences, it's
Yes.
important to have that difference because it makes everybody
Mm.
better.
Mm. But you use the hashtag stop playing diversity, and you say that
Yes.
access isn't inclusion. So in many a times people will just hire, pick and choose. Okay, let's have a woman here. Let's have a Asian here, or let's have a
Yes.
person from LGBTQ. But that's not inclusion. So how can they
No.
successfully implement um, that? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, many people think that hiring someone is giving them a seat at the table. But I always tell people that you need to make sure someone has a seat at the table and they have a voice at the table too.
voice.
If someone is not able to say something that actually
Mm.
helps to change the culture
Mm.
or to improve the environment,
Mm.
then that's what I call playing diversity. So it's not just about the appearance
Mm.
of that person. It is about the infusion of that person in the environment, even if it brings resistance or change,
Mm.
or if it makes people uncomfortable. And so I often say inclusion isn't always comfortable. It's not all about convenience. And
Yes.
many people think that it's like, oh, you're here now, so
Mm.
let's continue doing what we're doing. But
Mm.
any environment that brings someone new in with a
Mm.
different perspective is going to change, and
Change.
people aren't ready for that.
Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely true. And yeah, it shouldn't be about, handing out handouts. Uh,
Mhm.
Many companies are doing, and then that is also there. But also another question was about COVID and how people were working from home. So
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about that? How is it helping in certain ways, especially people of color? and uh,
Mhm.
and now people are calling them, most of the employees, back. So can you touch upon that? Because there many people also face microaggressions while working.
Yes.
So
Right. So we ended up seeing this thing called the Great Resignation
oh,
during the pandemic, and a lot of people just said that they'd rather work from home. And you hit it when you talked about microaggressions. Like there were so many things about the workplace that were unresolved before the pandemic started,
mm,
and what remote learning did was
mm,
give people a break from some of those in-person harmful actions
mm,
that occurred. So like we said, it could be microaggressions. Remember, we just talked about inclusion. So
mm,
maybe it's being in a meeting and being excluded.
mm,
And Zoom actually leveled the playing field a little bit because everyone was trying to work with the technology.
mm,
So many people were dealing with caregiving and things at home. And
mm,
so, it really put a stressor on everybody. And
mm,
it was just a way for people to have more grace and more compassion during a time when it was needed.
mm.
But what is happening is that we're moving away from that. Everyone's saying we need to go back to normal.
Yes.
But normal for whom? It was not normal for many women and people of color. It was normal for people who were in a system that was designed for them.
For
So now, yes.
mm,
So now people are saying, we don't want to go back to that. I don't want
yes.
to be excluded. I don't want to sit in the corner by myself. I don't want to be omitted from this.
Mm,
So people are taking that stance because they felt what it's like to
mhm,
have a little bit more freedom and
mhm.
to not be as oppressed in an in person space.
Very true. But how are companies going to move forward? But because especially I think working from home worked very well for, like you're saying, a lot of people of color and women, and
Mhm.
many have had kids.
Yes.
Within those times, and now suddenly they have to go back, 3 days a week, and it's kind of a difficult haul for many people, I'll say. But
Right.
but do you think that how do you think then companies should work around that? Uh,
Yeah. I think I used this analogy recently and I said so often, people remote working was a band-aid. It was not really the solution. It wasn't what I would say almost like the surgery that
mm,
takes care of the actual wound. And
mm,
I think that companies need to revamp their policies. They need to listen to the workers to see what is the root problem of why
mm,
people are uncomfortable. When it comes to psychological safety, for example, there was a study from a study from the McKinsey group, and I think also Lean In, that talked about how people wanted, like people didn't feel psychologically safe, particularly women of
okay.
color.
Mm,
And I think, what does that mean? Companies need to get into what makes people feel unsafe at work.
mm,
Where does this harm come in? Um, what is causing it? And not just look at the problems, but actually do something about it.
mm,
How are they held accountable now?
mm,
And how do they communicate to people that something is different and this is a safe space? And so it really comes with a lot more transparency, a lot more communication, and it comes with being genuine about DEI efforts, hence stop playing diversity,
huh.
because that is what's going to really make people want to come back to work and feel welcome and safe in the workplace.
Very well said. So I think we should be talking about equity and not diversity, I'll say. Equity is more
Mm,
about
mm,
systemic, right? So, and
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so if you kind of look at it, it all comes together, the diversity, equity, belonging, access, like there's
yes,
so many
yeah.
different
I mean, it's interconnected.
terms.
Mm,
But when you're talking about equity, like that is the thing that really is sustainable. I think it's the thing that
mm,
um like you don't see it all the time, but
mm,
it's in place. And I often think of equity in terms of the policies and how we make decisions and how we move in an organization.
mm,
Someone should not have to be in a room to make sure that they are paid equitably. Someone shouldn't have to be in a room to ensure that they are considered for a job, and not considered to be the diversity hire. And I think equity is that thing that is part of the culture. It
mm,
is it's the way of working that
mm,
is that takes into consideration everyone,
mm,
and it makes sure that the company is what it says it is, and it makes sure that people are not harmed. You notice I say harmed all the time,
mm,
because what I've learned over
mm,
time, and
mm,
what I've heard from so many
mm,
people who contact me on social media is the harm that is a result of a lot of what happens in the workplace. We often see it as a one and done type thing, as a snapshot, but
mm,
there are residual effects when we don't do DEI well in the workplace. And
mm.
it's often on the employee, the woman of color, the person of color, to heal themselves,
Oh,
to go to therapy,
mm,
to
mm,
actually address what has kept them from being successful in their next job.
mm. So you're saying hire for potential and not just experience, because a lot of women of color, or they might have the potential, but they're not given the chances, so the experience might be low you know
Yeah, it absolutely depends. Yes, yes, and I feel like that's part of my story too, where
Mm,
when I became a department chair, I was still
mm,
young.
yeah.
I had a formal leadership
Mm,
degree, but I had not been a department chair before.
mm,
And for many people who only look at a stereotype or think, okay, you have to look a certain way or have a certain experience to be successful,
mm,
that really is going to be a hindrance for people coming in
mm,
who are credentialed but have not had the doors open for them to do the work that they need to do in that space. And so you're right. It's there's always a testing period that is not always fair. But I think the problem with that is, why should you have to be tested
Mm.
when you are competent, when
Yeah.
your resume, when everything that you say says that you are qualified to do that work? And I think that's a constant issue that continues. And
Mm.
that just shows you about the systemic issues and the oppression that we have in environments because of the need for uh, marginalized groups to be tested
Mm.
by
Okay.
the people around them to be deemed successful.
Mm.
Because
And
when you were hired, that was your test.
yeah.
If you got the job, you've been tested.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And, like what I've read, and I'm learning a lot from you. I've not been in the tech sector ever. And, you know, uh, in the Silicon Valley, the tech companies say, oh, we try to hire, diverse people, but we don't have enough candidates. So then that
Mm,
becomes a completely different, you know, area to deal with. So that's
yeah.
that's one reason that they give. So uh lastly, I'll just ask you, what could be uh good practices for hiring for companies who are looking for diversity?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the comment that you just made
Mm.
about there aren't enough candidates.
Mm.
I've worked with several organizations
Mm.
who kind of say the same thing,
Yeah.
particularly in the STEM sector and the tech sector.
Yes.
And the other side of that is that people want to come to environments where they know they will be treated well
Mm.
and where they are valued. And
Mm.
so I argue that it isn't that there aren't always a lot of candidates. It's just that the word has sometimes gotten out among the qualified candidates that that's not a good place for them to work. And so,
Mm.
people, I mean, you think about it. If
Mm.
there is something that is excellent,
Mm.
and even if that organization has a track record of
Mm.
excellence as it connects back to DEI, people are going to want a job there. They're going to want to work there because they
Yes.
know
Mm.
that it's a good opportunity
Mm.
professionally, but it's also a good place for them.
Mm.
And I think that organizations need to understand that even post pandemic,
Mm.
people are looking for something a little different.
Mm.
They are looking for the holistic perspective, similar to what I said before. They're
Mm.
looking for transparency, and they're looking for evidence that a place is psychologically safe. They're
Mm.
looking to see that they're going to be treated well once they get inside the organization. And unfortunately, many spaces have not done the work, and they have not communicated outwardly that they are going to be a good place. So I just wanted to flip that conversation to say, it's often from the dominant space of a workplace, but
Yes.
the workplace often has a story that
Mm.
has trickled out into the community that says, don't go there. We
Mm.
don't want to be in your company. That's not a good place for us. Even if you are the most prestigious um, company,
Mm.
there are other metrics that
Mm.
we care about, and they
Okay.
often relate to DEI.
Mm.
And I'll give you an example. Am I allowed to give examples of
Sure.
places, like real examples?
Yes,
Like,
why not? I mean,
so I look at this, and of course I'm outward facing, but look at Twitter right now.
yeah.
There were a lot of layoffs,
Mm.
and many of the initial people who were laid off were
Mm.
people who worked with accessibility, the
Mm.
people who tried to make sure that the platform was safe. I mean, the people who worked with diversity, equity, and inclusion, those people were laid off
Yes.
first.
Mhm.
So if there was an ad, and I don't know if that would even be a goal for Twitter to try and, look at diverse candidates because of what they did, but say that was something that they decided was important.
Mm.
People are going to look at what they did. They're going to look at who they let off. They're going to look
Yes.
at their values, and
Mm.
that's not going to attract a
Mm.
lot of people of color. It's not going, I mean, you know what I mean? It's not going to
I
attract
can
people who
get, yes,
care
what you're
about
saying.
that.
Hmm. It's like companies gaslighting, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Amazing. Okay. Dr. Monica, there's so much we can talk about. And I don't think I was really well equipped for this interview, but
Oh,
there's a lot there's a lot we learned, and I'm sure our viewers and audience learned a lot from you. Thank you so much. Keep up the wonderful work that you're doing, and congratulations once again on the very well deserved award. And I will tell you, or you can tell our listeners, if they where they can follow you and your blogs and your podcasts and everything.
yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, first of all, for this opportunity. It has been delightful, and you are an amazing person. I
Oh,
love what you're doing for your community. So thank you so much. It has been an honor. But yeah, people can follow me on social media on all platforms at
mhm,
Dr. Monica Cox. That's Dr. Monica Cox.
mhm,
I also have a website by the same name, drmonicacox.com.
mhm.
And they can email me, info@drmonicacox.com. So I do have a Stop Playing Diversity podcast with just some nuggets and affirmations, a very quick podcast that gets to some of the nuggets that we talked about today, like some of the topics when I talk about harm and safety. That's on the podcast. And I just make sure that I try to educate people about conversations that should happen related to DEI, but often don't. So thank you
Very
again.
true. I think, I guess, if it's done right, it'll work for the companies and the people. So it's a win-win
Yeah.
situation for both. Thank you once again, and thank you to Adolfa, founder of Candidly
Yeah.
Speaking. Yes, you know, uh,
Yes.
Adolfa Cole. Thank you so much for connecting us. And take care,
Yes.
Monica. We'll
Thank you.
catch up again. Thank you. Bye
Thank you
bye.
so much. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Shosha is a creative Indian restaurant located in the heart of Silicon Valley. Shosha is a woman-owned business that serves traditional Indian flavors assimilated with molecular gastronomy techniques. The best Indian bar with happy hours in the Bay Area serves handcrafted drinks inspired by flavors from India with modern craft cocktails that are presented in unique ways. Shosha is a modern take on traditional Indian cuisine. We specialize in corporate luncheon, anniversary celebrations, birthday parties, and catering. Do check us out for a memorable modern Indian dining experience. Shosha is located at 141 South Murphy Avenue in Sunnyvale, California.